Cary Williams is known as American Arbitrage, and he's been an online reseller for a number of years. He's grown his audience of over 870,000 on TikTok, 109,000 on Instagram, 23,000 on YouTube, and they tune in to watch his videos on garage sale and thrift shop picking. But Cary also has a sports card collection. He's a sports card buyer and seller, and he's recently started a dedicated profile to highlight his card-related activity. And I wanted to bring him on today to talk a little bit about that. Cary, welcome to the show.
Glad to be on it. Nice to see you.
We first started our interactions back in 2020, but I'd love to hear more about your origin story. How did you get into the reselling business?
You know, I honestly think, because I'm known for doing garage sales and estate sales and thrift store stuff, but I think it all started with sports cards. I got my first little shoebox full of cards from my older brother, 1990, chocked full of Donruss. If you remember that, like red speckled, paint speckled Donruss baseball cards. And there was some 77, 78 football, which was kind of cool, but I was super interested in the baseball. That got me thinking about prices of stuff. Looking back on it, it got me thinking about what stuff was worth. And that was, the time when you would go get a Beckett and you would look it up, and I would put everything in my binder and price it. My family would do yard sales from time to time. And I remember asking my parents on weekends that, randomly, if I could do a yard sale by myself, and they would watch, and I could make some extra money typically, so I could get, $5, so I could either get like a Ninja Turtle or go to the sports card shop. It was one of those two things that I wanted to spend my money on. So I was doing that, not really realizing that I was into reselling and flipping stuff. And I went to college, just enjoyed college, goofed around, ended up just doing what I wanted, which was random, and I got 3 degrees, which I didn't use any of them. I got a political science, a history, and a Spanish degree. And I graduated in the midst, like 2010, kind of during the big recession we had, realizing none of those degrees were going to really work unless I went back and got some certificates or got my master's and stuff to teach. And so I was planning on doing that. And I got started reselling in the meantime. My mom had brought me like a sealed Pokemon game. At the time, wasn't super valuable. Now they're super, super valuable. People are grading them. But I just put it at $1 auction because during my college years, occasionally I would go on eBay and buy cards on auction, and I would collect a stack of them. I remember I was building this one stack that I was going to just start at $1 and try to make a profit on. And I remember the crown jewel of that stack was my Hanley Ramirez autograph card, because he was a big deal for a few years there in like the late aughts. I ended up making money every time, just out of pure luck, because I wasn't computing trying to make money. I enjoyed doing it. So I guess I had the bug for reselling before I even knew I did. I started doing that. I didn't go back to school like I planned. I opened up a shop in Utah. I started a live auction. I've done so many random things over the last 10 or 11 years, reselling related, including making videos, which is what I'm kind of known for on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, building up that profile. But my first video on YouTube, my first video ever, was how to sell sports cards. It's still one of my biggest videos to this day. So, I've always loved sports cards. It's always been my number one thing I enjoy to resell. But yeah, I go to garage sales, estate sales, and I find stuff, whatever is worth something, I flip it.
Do you have cards that you have for your own collection? Do you actually collect as well?
I have a hard time. Here's the thing. If I wasn't a reseller, I would, yes, because I collected before. The thing is, what I've learned from doing clean outs and buying massive amounts of stuff, doing live auctions where I'm selling hundreds of items at a time, I just am not a big fan of having stuff, if that makes sense, of like personal stuff. I have started recently a PC of Jerry Stackhouse. That's the one, like from mid 90s. With me, a personal collection one has to be one that I can find out and about easily and cheap. That's kind of the fun of it. I want to be able to find this stuff in a dollar box. So it's not really going to be, I do find Kobe Bryant stuff like that. I like basketball probably the best is what I'm saying. Okay. But Jerry Stackhouse to me was a flagship player from the mid 90s that he had a great career, but he didn't pan out to become, the next Michael Jordan like they all thought he would. He has a ton of cool cards from that, mid 90s, late 90s era, lots of autographs, and a lot of that stuff I can find digging through dollar boxes or bargain bins, and that kind of just adds to the hunt a little bit. It makes it fun for me. I mean, I have started to delve into looking on eBay for some of that stuff, but the hunt is really the fun part of it, looking for this stuff and finding it, in the just out and about. That's kind of the joy.
Once you move from the pursuit of the Stackhouse collection, from just the stuff that you find in these dollar boxes, once you move that into starting to look for that stuff on eBay, I feel like it might be getting a little bit more of an anchor, and it might stick around for a little bit. You're starting to get a little
Yeah,
serious about that, it seems like.
I agree. Like I just decided recently, because as a kid, my favorite player was Sharif Abdul Rahim, and I do
Sure.
save some of his cards, but I just, for whatever reason, it hasn't caught on with me in the last couple years to want to go search for his cards. But I was just like, yeah, recently going through a box and I saw a Jerry Stackhouse card, and to me, I was like, this is valuable. It was in the dollar box. It probably is only worth a couple bucks now. But to me, I'm still 1995 Cary looking at his Beckett saying that's a $15 card. To me in my head, it feels like it's still. So I had to pick it up, and it brought me some joy. And I think I will get into the eBay thing, and I will start. It'll be addicting, and I need to have that little collection. I feel like being in this field, it's something that brings joy, and it adds a little bit to what I'm doing with videos and stuff. I think it adds a narrative that we can have, and it's something I'm enjoying.
Your 3 degrees is kind of a running gag or a running joke, in some of your
Yes.
content. You refer to that frequently. I was wondering, you mentioned that there was nothing career-wise that you realized you were going to be doing with those unless you went back to school. But I was wondering, was there anything from the pursuit of those degrees that you've been able to use in your reselling pursuits? Is there anything that you learned from that time in college that you've been able to leverage in your business now?
The one thing I learned about myself going to college and getting those degrees is, thankfully, like, maybe the one skill I have that's really has set me apart in my life is, like, once I get my eyes or my sight set on something, I finish it. I had the idea that I was going to get 2 degrees, and then I ended up my last year of college wanting to stick around, and I realized I just needed 10 more credits to get a history degree, so I got that third one. But I really learned that if I want to do anything, even if it kind of sounds wild, like getting 3 degrees, which it did to me at the time, I could pretty much do anything I set my mind to. So that really helped. It let me know that I was capable of focusing on anything that was interesting to me and being successful at it. And I've been lucky in my life. I'm not a good multitasker. I'm not great at a lot of things. But the one thing is, like, it seems to be with whether it's social media or like having a business, I've been able to focus on one thing or maybe two things at a time and do really, really well with it. But I loved college. It was so much fun. I loved going to class. I loved learning. But I mean, the honest gag is, like, I went to college. I mean, when I started college in 2002, that was the thing. That was the thing everybody seemed to be doing. And by the time I graduated, the world had already kind of changed, and it's changed even more. The recession happened. A lot of these degrees, just there weren't jobs out there that were decent and interesting enough to do. And then I just kind of fell into this, and I've loved every minute of it.
When we were, first interacting back in 2020, I first noticed, or the first content I saw was more of the garage selling and other reselling videos. But you mentioned your first video was on YouTube, even, was buying and selling cards. You've worked that stuff in over the years, but now recently you started a separate card profile instead of just including that content along with your other reselling content. Tell me about that decision. Why separate those two profiles, or why add that second card specific profile versus just continuing to include it with all of the other reselling videos that you're making?
It's weird how algorithms work and all that kind of stuff. I've learned this from TikTok with Reels, with all those things. If you don't give people kind of what they're used to from you, it doesn't always work. And there was a time in 2020 when on YouTube especially, I was doing, like, I would go and buy cards and flip them, and I did several videos on that, and they were honestly doing better than my garage sale content on YouTube. Looking back, I know if I would have focused and pivoted my channel to being card centric, it would have probably been bigger than it is now. But I just realized I wanted to separate the two. It confused people. A lot of people in the garage sale space aren't interested in sports cards, from what I found. But I still wanted to do sports card content. I didn't want to mess up the YouTube algorithm, as boring as that sounds. So I decided to start it anew with a new TikTok, a new Instagram, a new YouTube, thinking that there was kind of a market. I was very specific on what I wanted to focus on within cards too. I think that's really important for anybody when they're doing content, but also like when they're doing anything in business or in sports cards. I think it's important to have a focus. And I'm all about going to the dollar boxes, going to the bargain bins, and finding deals in my content, or opening up retail stuff, like stuff I've always done. I'm just doing the stuff I did anyway. I'm just filming it now. That's the only difference. And it's done really well. I'm surprised. It's probably, in my opinion, probably going to grow bigger than my main channel within a couple years if I keep it up. That's my thought, but who knows? Who knows?
Why do you enjoy cards so much?
Gosh, man, that's a great question. There's something within, I think, every human being that really enjoys treasure hunts. I feel like, or finding value in stuff. There's a reason why Pawn Stars and Storage Wars and all those shows were giant hits to people who aren't interested necessarily in actually going out and doing it themselves. Like with my main TikTok, like you said, I have like over 800,000, almost 900,000 people. They don't resell. Like 800 something thousand of them don't resell, but they connect to treasure hunting. And I think it's the same thing with cards. I particularly focus not on speculative plays or, like, is this guy going to get hot? Is this guy not? Because nobody knows. I mean, I wish we knew, but like, there's a lot of people who wasted a lot of money on Jerry Stackhouse cards, for example, or, players who ended up panning out. Allen Iverson's a Hall of Famer, but his cards, aren't worth as much as some of the new hot rookies this year, Paulo Banchero, and the same happens in baseball in every sport. So I'm all about finding the undervalued stuff right now, going in a dollar box and finding a player that they put in the dollar box 6 months ago that now just got called up to the major leagues, I a couple, I think yesterday I sold a card, Hunter Brown, which I wasn't fully aware. I think he plays for the Astros. I think it was Hunter Brown. It was a Leaf autograph. I got it for $1 and it sold for 40, and I got it last week. And it was just in there. There's a lot of reasons it was in a low end box. It was Leaf. If you're not paying attention, you could throw stuff in there because you don't know your prospects. I only figured it out because I looked it up, and now if I ever find stuff again, it'll pay off in the future. But that stuff happens all the time. It's fascinating.
This is why I think we are brothers from a different mother, because that's one of the reasons that I love reselling cards at the low end too, and why I focus at the low end too, because it's so much easier to find stuff that other people have disregarded as being worthless and not worth their time. But there are those treasures in there where you can turn, not to steal the name of your podcast, but you can turn that trash, other people's trash, into treasure. You can find and create the value in that stuff when the low end. So I appreciate hearing that, because that means you are a man after my own heart as well. When it comes to the profitability side, or maybe that mix of things that you're buying and selling, how do cards compare to those other things that you're selling? How do they perform in relation to the other things that you're picking up to resell?
Quantity wise, by far, I sell the most cards, but I do focus a lot on low end. And part of what I'm learning on focusing more on low end in the last 6, 7, 8 months, I went from maybe 300-400 cards on my eBay to like over 6,000, or right around 6,000 cards, is that I definitely need to mix in both types of things, because the low end card game is tough, because you got to buy quantity. The stuff doesn't necessarily sell right away, as much as I love the cards and everything. So there's days where you don't make what you need to make to make it worthwhile on any given day. So I mix in stuff like today. I mean, I sold a couple $10 cards. I sold a couple $1.50 cards. I sold a $50 Furby that was new in the package, that I found at a garage sale. So it's a mixture of stuff that's how you stay afloat. And then honestly, content creation has been a big part of what I do too, because it's something that could be monetized. And I figure if I'm going to go out and do this, I might as well share it with other people and teach. And then that's also monetizable. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But yeah, no, the low end card game, my goal is to be, 20, 30,000 cards deep on eBay, hopefully within the next year, if that's possible. That's the goal.
Very cool. I kind of see you in a unique position, right? You have this massive reselling following, and you're clearly involved in cards, but up to this point, you're not necessarily a big part of the card community. And I say that in quotes because outside of your recent panel with Bo, I've not seen you on a lot of other shows or podcasts or part of other panels and things like that in the card world. But I think you maybe touched on a little bit. I was wondering about the overlap between your audience that is interested in cards and your audience that is interested in the other reselling and treasure hunting type of things that you do. Do you have a good feel for how much of your following is from the traditional card people versus more traditional reselling people? Does that make sense at all?
No, I know exactly what you mean. On my card channel, like my card channels, I would say at maybe the first month, it was 50-50 or more, like half. I think the first 500 or 600 people on my YouTube, most of them were from my main channel. But at this point, like it's an algorithm thing. So like you get known by, it was surprising to me. So I've been going to card shows for years, steady since about 2019. I used to go as a kid, but I started going back during the boom to card shows in particular. Before that, I was the retail buyer. I was going and buying, or buying breaks online, in the mid 2000s and mid 2010s and whatever. But I started going back to card shows, and I would go and nobody would know who I was because I was a garage sale guy, or I wasn't even doing content at certain times. But the last time I went, which was just a week and a half ago, I had like several people come up to me. Okay. And I was at the dollar bins, which is on brand. I'm literally yep. the dude who sits for 5 hours at the dollar bins. That's literally what I was doing. And then I had people coming up. I think they put one and one together or two and two together and realized that it was me. So I think I'm getting into a new audience. It is a similar audience. And I think personally, and I feel very strongly about this, there's a big need for I think the practical reselling of cards content on that on YouTube. And I think there's a lot of people doing it, but I feel like with the years of experience I have in making content, I think I can do it in a way that's going to catch on quick. I hope. It seems like it has. It's kind of gone really fast and grown really quickly, which has been surprising to me. And I don't feel like we talked a little bit before the podcast started about how much crossover from TikTok, like my audience went to YouTube, and it doesn't really happen that way. And I feel like with cards, maybe initially 500 people came over, but now it's just people finding me, realizing one of two things: that, oh man, there's a practical way to go out with $20 and make some money selling cards. Or there's the whole other audience that's like, what is this guy doing? He's an idiot. He's wasting time and money. And that's fine too, because you want to play on that and hopefully educate them on what you're doing. And then if nothing else, they'll watch your content and that'll help you. So,
many of us we have to deal with figuring out how we talk about cards or reselling with our friends and family who just don't get it. I've even heard some of your fellow podcast co-hosts give you a hard time about you dealing in cards.
Yes.
Have you had to, have you also had to explain your card dealing with your fellow resellers, or how have you gone about approaching that? Or, what's your experience been like when it comes to, you trying to help other people understand what that opportunity might be in cards, just like I might have to help other people understand what opportunity might be in buying somebody else's attic and selling a bunch of dragonfly knickknacks that are from some brand that people don't realize are actually worth a lot of money.
That's a really good question, because you're right. I do get a lot of people don't understand what I'm doing. I think that's very fair. They don't understand why, especially like the low end cards. I think a lot of people think of card flipping and they think of this higher end stuff, but I mean, my heroes when it comes to card selling are not the high-end slab flippers. They're the Burbank sports cards, the DC sports, like the people who are doing mass quantities. And I'm very interested in that and want to kind of leverage my audience. But the way I've handled it, to answer your question, is I just joke about everything. So I've really leaned into that. And that's the running joke on my podcast, is that I'm the $1.50 card guy. When in reality, I don't buy cards to sell at $1.50. I buy collections. And right. I have a Bo Jackson 1988 Topps card. I'm like, somebody wants that, I'll put it at $1.50, and it gets in a pile, put it through a scanner. I have Card Dealer Pro. I can do it quickly. At this point, I was just posting it manually because I enjoyed it. It was cathartic and therapeutic. And it was like when I was a kid, I would get my baseball cards out. I don't know if you were like this. And one weekend, I would put them all into teams. And then the next weekend, I would take them out of teams and put them into set. I just loved going through my cards. It was something that brought me joy, and it still does to this day. So that's what people don't understand. I built my whole career in what I'm doing around stuff I love doing. I've really been good at avoiding doing stuff I don't like. So I've kind of went into garage selling and loved it. And then I realized my favorite part of it is cards. And I've tried to focus on that and monetize that as much as possible. What I like is low end cards. It's going to take a little while for it to be as profitable as I want it to be, day to day, but it's growing. There's some great days. There's some slow days, but thankfully I have garage sale stuff that I do and content. So it allows me the runway to do it the way I want to do it.
The thing I love about reselling is that pretty much anyone who's willing to put in some work is able to do it. And whether we're talking about cards or garage sale items or estate sale finds, there's money to be made, whether you want to just make a few $100 a month as a side hustle or turn it into something like you've done and make it a full-time business. What do you enjoy most about the reselling opportunity? Why have you chosen that as the way that you make your money to live on and make that your full-time career?
That's a really good question. And gosh, I don't know. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I do it, but I kind of feel like I have to. It's just like, it's what I enjoy doing with my time. That's a very good question. Like I said earlier, like I found a way somehow, some way to kind of carve out a living doing exactly what I like, which is not just going to garage. Literally the three things I love to do most are resell, sports card stuff, and making content. And that's literally what I'm doing. I didn't realize like the content stuff I would love as much as I did, but I do, and I really enjoy it. And there's days where content takes over my whole day because that's all I want to focus on because I'm trying to build something there. And there's days where I just do nothing but focus on cards, and there's other days. But I don't know why I do it. I mean, there's other things I could do. I do have degrees. I probably would need to go back to school and maybe do some internships or something because I've been out of it for 10 or 15 years from doing what I was planning on doing, but I could get into that. And I just don't have any desire to. And I really don't know why, but I am doing exactly what I want to do. That much I know.
You're now in Las Vegas, but you were doing this in Utah, like you mentioned before that. How have those differences in locations made a difference in your business?
One of the big reasons we wanted to move down south was the year-round garage sale resale opportunity. It is hot here in the summer, and it isn't, as good as Utah in the summer for garage sales and going out and making that kind of content and finding the stuff to flip. But it is year-round here. So we wanted to go to a place where the weather was a little bit more hospitable. My girlfriend, Dawn, had lived in Utah most of her life. She wanted to change. The fact that we are kind of nomads in what we do, we have a lot of flexibility. Dawn had a full-time job. She was able to quit because of this. She also does content. And then, I didn't necessarily have to stay in Utah to do what I'm doing. So we decided to move to a place that had a little bit more action going on. We're near California, which is where I'm from originally. The weather's nice. A lot of card stuff down there too. Now that thankfully that wasn't really the plan initially, but now I can, drive to Burbank card shop and do like a video if I want to, and drive back the same night if I want to. So there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool opportunities that being in Utah, there was a lot less, I felt like.
I've also heard you talk about kind of maybe your aversion to debt. And many people think that debt is necessary to build a business, to acquire inventory and that type of thing. Have you found it possible to scale without using debt?
It just takes longer. It does. I mean, we've done loans in the past and everything. And it's just, I found the best way for me to work is to work with the money I have. It allows me to be a little bit more disciplined. I'm not saying that's necessarily the right idea. I love when people talk about how they're using credit cards and the points. That's probably the smartest way to do it, in my opinion. And I probably will get to that point, but for whatever reason, I just have never used credit cards. I've been dealing with money I have, and if I don't have money, I don't invest. And the cool thing is with what I do, I could produce money out of the thousands of cards I have in my inventory if I don't want to go out and spend money, or I could make content that will also make me money, out of thin air basically, or out of an idea. So it helps me be more disciplined. It helps me focus a little bit more personally. It doesn't work for everybody. I think everybody's different. And I think, I'm not really a financial advisor guy, but I would guess the credit card, and as long as you were paying it back every month and being super disciplined and using the points would be the most intelligent way to do it, probably.
You mentioned content creation and that being a potential revenue stream for you. Do you think that you would still have the ability to sell profitably without that massive following? I guess, have you seen opportunities to turn your following into direct customer bases on the online platforms that you sell on, or have they kind of operated independently?
The one place that I've really been able to drive people into has been Whatnot. Whatnot has grown to where I think I don't know how many thousands of followers, 8,000 followers. And I'd say a lot of that's been driven, especially from Instagram, because there's direct links you can do through stories. So Whatnot, like that, which is a totally new platform in the last couple years. And I've done cards and I've done general garage sale kind of sales as well. I've been able to move a lot of the people onto Whatnot, which is surprising. eBay, yes, and then also Instagram's a great place for selling directly to people as well. But I have been able to do it a little bit. It's hard to move people from watching social media on one platform to another, but I found certain platforms are decent at driving people into an eBay or Whatnot store, particularly Instagram is what I've found. And I've heard like Twitter's good. TikTok's not particularly good. It might become better now that they have TikTok Shop and other things available. But at the moment, Instagram is the best place for me to drive, and YouTube's solid too. So,
before Whatnot started, were you doing Instagram Live and Facebook Lives and things like that to try to sell?
Not for selling, not for
a
selling.
live stream, or
when the time I started Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, I was still doing, I think at the very start, I was still doing live auctions in our store in Utah.
Okay.
We were actually kind of like sharing a store with somebody, and we were the in-house auctioneers and stuff for that location. So I've always kind of had that aspect to my business. It's just changed over the last decade from actually in-house auctions to Whatnot. So I've never really relied on any one revenue stream ever as a full-time reseller. I've had eBay and a store and an auction for years. I had eBay and Whatnot and Content Now. I've had mixtures of all 4 or 5 of those things at different times. I think it's important to diversify what you're doing. But if you do want to do something like content, I think it's important to talk about that you sell on eBay, drop your links, do all that. I try not to be pushy about it, but I think it can help for sure. I definitely get sales from that. But the thing is that most people will tell you that do YouTube is if I was not focusing my time on YouTube, I would be selling more stuff. So it's kind of, I'm mitigating my risk, but I'm not necessarily making more money, if that makes sense. I'm making a decent amount in 2 spots where I could be making all that amount on one spot if I didn't have the other, which I kind of like spreading out the risk a little bit in my business.
Yeah, I am that same way. I like to sell on multiple online platforms as well as the physical shop, and so I've got that opportunity for multiple streams. I know other people like Bo, 1 Million Cubs Bo. He's eBay only, and his live show, or the physical card show that he runs, but he's all, one platform only when it comes to online selling. And I know people do it different ways. I did have one question about Whatnot. I know that's a platform that you're on the card side of Whatnot. It seems like every week there is a new scam coming up, people not shipping, people rigging breaks, the sophomore breakers that come on and do shows. And, they've developed somewhat of a questionable reputation from cards. There's some good people on there and there's some very questionable people. But I know Whatnot is more than just cards. Like you and some of your other co-hosts, they sell on there with the other merchandise and the other types of products. I was wondering, from the perspective that you've got outside of just cards, have they had similar issues go on with with reselling or selling some of these other types of products? Are there issues that other sellers have had as far as people selling other collectibles and things and them not shipping? Or does that seem like maybe it's really a card or breaking specific issue on Whatnot?
I think it's an issue with reselling or auctions in general. Like I did live auctions in Utah, and then you would hear not necessarily in Utah, but just culturally within the auction community nationwide, that there was auction houses you didn't want to deal with because they did this and that. And I feel like with any platform like this, it's been really tough. Whatnot, I felt like was really, I don't know if they were like this with the sports cards so much, because it was already, when I started Whatnot, it was already going. And I started Whatnot like almost, I think 2 years ago at this point, maybe a little longer. But then all the categories since then, like I was, the first week they did video games, I did a video game auction. They brought me in to do video games, even though I'm not a video game seller. I went and bought some. So like I've seen a lot of these places grow. And I think as they let more people in, people try some stuff, people try to get away with stuff. And I think Whatnot does a fairly good job at getting rid of people that are problematic and that cause issues, but it's kind of hard to, I think one of the nice things about the card community, I feel like, is it's pretty vigilant. I feel like there's a lot of people, content creators to people on Whatnot that are watching what's happening and keeping people honest. But it's simple. It's just business 101. If you're going to be on Whatnot and you're going to be selling, have a fun auction, make people feel welcome, and don't screw people over. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. And a good auction is simple. I've done auctions for years, and it comes down to this. You want people to come in and have a good time. And if they buy stuff, you want them to have an excellent experience. And if they don't buy stuff, you want them leaving going, it was fun hanging out with Cary and Dawn, my girlfriend. I didn't buy anything, but I'll be there next time when I have some money. That's the way I like to look at it. So.
Hey, the National Sports Collectors Convention is coming up in Chicago here at the end of July. Was just curious, are you planning to attend that at all?
I'm thinking about it. I've been wanting to go forever. I wish they would. They haven't been in Anaheim since I was a child. I wish they were doing it West Coast. I've looked into hotels and stuff. The issue, I don't know if it's an issue, but thankfully, like with my garage sale content stuff in the summer, there's like weirdly in the last couple of years, a circuit of conventions that have come up, and being in Trash to Cash, the podcast, we are like somehow unofficial MCs at everything now. So I'm going to Phoenix at the end of the month. I'm going to Charlotte in, August, I think it is. And then in September, I'm going to Cincinnati. So I'm going all over. But if I can make it, I will, if I can swing it. I'm definitely going to try to be at Burbank, which I think will grow into hopefully the national of the West Coast. And I definitely want to travel more. I went to Collecticon in Dallas with the Collects app guys a couple weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was more of a Pokemon show, but it made me want to go to the Dallas show, which is, plane flight wise, really, really close to here in Vegas. So I do want to do more of that. I definitely don't want to I don't need that necessarily to find stuff to resell. Sure. A lot of people in the content community do it for content. I definitely would. I don't think I wouldn't make money doing that because it costs a lot to do that at the moment. But I would like to do more shows. I think it would be fun. It would be cool. It'd be a good experience to get to know people in the community more. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to national. Long story short, maybe. I hope. It's been a dream of mine. I tell Dawn, my girlfriend, every year I want to go to national, and there's always some reason not to.
well, if you do, the Singles Club, which is one of the booths that has several 100,000 cards, all priced at $1. I'll be there. Bo will be there. Dr. Beckett, several of us will all be bellied up to those boxes, digging through, trying to find those treasures like you talked about. If you do make it, you'll have a seat next to us at the Singles Club.
I will definitely be there hopefully next year, but if I'm going to try to swing it this year, I'm going to try to. I'd love to do. That's like a dream. Just hang out with a bunch of people who love doing exactly what I love doing in a massive place with tons of single cards everywhere. I'd love it. It'd be heaven.
Hey, do you have any questions for me?
Do you have a set design that's your favorite all time for baseball cards?
That's a tough one. 1986 was the first year that I collected. And so I've got it. That design has a special place in my heart.
Great.
The one thing I don't necessarily like about that is it just had the team name across the top. It didn't really have logos. I kind of like when the team logo is on there as well. The next year, 87, even though that's such an overdone set at this point, it's used in so many retro designs at this point. Yeah. That's another one of my favorites just because that was kind of that next year, that second year in there. But I really like a lot of those vintage era set designs. There's something cool about that era where almost every single year was a completely new look. You can look back at those
Very
and you
true.
can almost immediately say, yep, I know what that was. Where it seems like a lot of the modern stuff, you can kind of lose track on. Now, was that 2018 or 19, or was that 2013 or 14? Like, some of those things
Yep,
just
I
look
agree
so
with you.
similar, but those vintage sets, they just kind of came up with a unique design almost every year.
It's true. I think the first set I ever, like I was talking about, 1990 Donruss. I don't necessarily love that set design. If I was going to go like classic 80s or like vintage for me, 89 Tops is probably one of my favorite designs ever. I don't know why. This, like, I just love it. For me, I started in 90, so it was a fairly, it was everywhere at that point still for me to get packs of and everything. But in particular within the sets, the thing that I fell in love with, the first chase card for me was the Diamond King stuff. The
Okay.
Dick Perez, artwork stuff that, I mean, it got, like, I think of some of the mid 90s stuff when it got a little bit more vibrant and colorful and abstract, like 90, I think it was 94, 95, where they were like really nice paintings and stuff. Those are the sets that I can see myself as I start to grow more PC stuff. Is I probably want to do a full run of pretty much any Diamond King set that was ever made for baseball, and then maybe get into some other sports that did it, Gridiron Kings or whatever back in the 90s. But baseball, the Diamond King stuff is iconic for me.
Yeah, I got to interview Dick a couple weeks ago for the podcast. There's
Yes,
a documentary coming about. Yep. And so getting a chance
I was
to,
like, you're talking to the Diamond King guy. I was so excited. That's
yeah, I
awesome.
mean,
That's so
it's
cool.
one of those things that, and I think I might have said it during the interview, but when I was a, 10, 11, 12-year old or whatever, collecting those cards at that point, to think that 25 or 30 years into the future, I was going to get a chance to have a conversation with him and talk about it. I mean,
Insane.
it's one of those things that you just don't think would ever happen. But it's really cool. So that's cool to hear that you like those Diamond Kings as well.
Yeah, those are just the absolute height of inserts for me. I mean, there a lot of the late 90s stuff I got into. Like, I mean, one set I would love to complete, and this is a basketball one, would be the first year of Skybox autographics. I just
Mhm.
remember what a big deal autographs were at that time, and game use stuff, which has kind of changed. I don't really care about autographs so much anymore. But at that time, what I wouldn't have given to pull one of those from a pack, which I never did. I definitely picked some up, an Adam Keefe, a jazz guy here and there at a card show or something, but I was never able to afford any of the really cool players at the time. No Grant Hills, no Kevin Garnett's, no Steve Nash, but I'd love to go complete that set too.
Very cool. Well, hey, we've been going about 45, 50 minutes or so at this point. I appreciate you spending a few minutes today. I want to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you. Like you mentioned, you're on a few different channels, on a few different platforms. Let people know where they can find you if they want to follow along with the card channel, or if they're interested in hearing and seeing and learning about some of the other buying and reselling related content that you're producing.
True. Okay. Yeah, no problem. I am on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok primarily under two names. American Arbitrage, which is the main name you see below me. That's for the garage sale and the reselling, more general content. And then American Arbitrage Cards is the newer card centric channel, which is also on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So basically, just type in American Arbitrage. And if you're interested in sports cards, type in cards or sports cards as well, and you'll find that channel. But it's funny because if you type in American Arbitrage Cards, you'll actually find a few garage sales and a few old videos on my main channel that were sports card centric. So I do have two channels, but it's all things reselling all the time. That's what I focus on.
Very cool. Hey, I appreciate your time, Cary. Thanks for the conversation.
Of course. Thank you, man.